The sun cast a golden glow over the sprawling Donovan estate on the outskirts of Los Angeles, its marble floors gleaming beneath the grandeur of crystal chandeliers. But beneath this opulent facade, betrayal simmered, waiting to erupt. Within these walls, a pregnant wife, blissfully unaware, was about to witness the destruction of the life she had so carefully built. Rachel Donovan, 5 months pregnant, stood in the vast foyer of the mansion, one hand resting on the gentle curve of her stomach. She had dreamed of this chapter in her life, awaiting the birth of her child, a symbol of love between her and her millionaire husband. But lately, unease had crept into her heart. The late-night phone calls, the hurried whispers, the carefully guarded expressions that never quite reached Daniel Donovan's eyes. For weeks, she had pushed her fears aside, convincing herself she was being paranoid. Yet, the house felt different today. The tension in the air was thick, pressing down on her as she glanced toward the grand staircase. Just then, Daniel emerged from his study, his normally confident posture replaced by something heavier, guilt. Rachel opened her mouth to speak, but before a word could escape, the sharp echo of heels striking marble filled the foyer. The sound was deliberate, authoritative, and dripping with entitlement. A woman stepped into view, her presence as striking as the bold red lipstick she wore. Sierra Monroe. Tall, elegant, and effortlessly poised, she carried herself like she owned the place. Dressed in a sleek black dress that hugged every curve, she exuded confidence, the kind that came from knowing she had nothing to fear. Her hazel eyes flicked over Rachel with amusement, a slow smirk curling her lips. In that moment, Rachel felt the weight of every unspoken fear she had ignored. The careful lies, the missing pieces, and now standing before her was the undeniable truth. Her husband's mistress had arrived. The smirk on Sierra Monroe's lips carried the unmistakable air of victory, as if she had already won a battle Rachel never even knew had begun. She moved with effortless grace, her every step deliberate, a silent declaration that she belonged here. Rachel's stomach tightened, but she refused to waver. The betrayal she had tried so hard to deny was standing right in front of her, draped in designer fabric and shameless arrogance. Sierra's eyes raked over her, taking in every detail from her simple dress to the undeniable curve of her pregnancy. "Well, Daniel," Sierra mused, her voice dripping with amusement, "you told me I could come by whenever I wanted. You just forgot to mention that your little wife would be home." Rachel's grip on reality fractured at those words. It wasn't just what Sierra said, it was the way she said it, the way she dismissed her existence with a single sentence. Any remaining illusion of security crumbled in an instant. Daniel appeared from his study, his expression darkening the moment he saw Sierra. "I told you to wait for me to call," he hissed, his jaw tight. "This is not the time." A slow, wicked gleam danced in Sierra's eyes. She ignored him completely and sauntered deeper into the room, her fingers trailing along the polished mahogany of the console table, eyes flicking from the ornate chandelier to the grand staircase. "I think it's the perfect time," she countered smoothly before settling her gaze on Rachel. "After all, I only have Daniel's best interests at heart." Rachel fought to keep her breathing steady, but she felt as if she were standing on the edge of a collapsing bridge. Daniel's silence cut deeper than anything Sierra could say. She turned to him, her voice tight. "Daniel, what is this?" Her fingers trembled slightly at her sides, but she forced herself to stand her ground. Sierra let out a light, almost pitying laugh. "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed. "I'm Sierra Monroe. You know, Daniel's closest confidant." She glanced at him with feigned innocence before turning back to Rachel. "We've been collaborating for quite some time now." Rachel's baby kicked, a sharp, almost urgent reminder that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. With a deep breath, she straightened her spine and met Sierra's gaze head-on. "If you need his help with your business," Rachel said, her voice surprisingly steady, "you can make an appointment at his office." Sierra's smirk deepened, amusement flashing in her eyes. "You really think that's all this is?" Rachel didn't answer. But in that moment, she vowed she would not let this woman ruin her family without a fight. Rachel's nails pressed into her palms as she forced herself to stay still. The rage swelling in her chest begged to be released, but she wouldn't give Sierra the satisfaction of seeing her break. "You don't belong here," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. Sierra's lips curled into a slow mocking smile. "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed. "I think you misunderstand. You might be carrying his child, but that doesn't make you special." She took a step forward, her heels clicking against the marble. Rachel stiffened. The air between them felt suffocating, charged with an unspoken challenge. Daniel moved as if to intervene, lifting a hand toward Sierra, but she turned sharply, fixing him with a glare so venomous it stopped him cold. "I told you this wasn't the time," Daniel muttered, voice tight with frustration. Sierra let out a short, amused laugh. "Oh, please. Since when do I wait for your permission?" She returned her attention to Rachel, her expression dripping with condescension. "Your husband and I share more than just business, darling. Secrets, intimate moments." She let the words linger, watching Rachel's face pale. "Did he tell you about the weekend in Malibu? Or the penthouse in New York?" Rachel's stomach twisted. The room swayed slightly around her, but she locked her knees, refusing to let the shock show. Liar. Her mind screamed it, begged her to deny every poisonous word. But deep down she knew. The missing pieces clicked together in cruel clarity, forming an image she could no longer ignore. Tears burned the edges of her vision, but she wouldn't let them fall. Not here. Not in front of her. "How could you do this?" she asked, her voice cracking despite her resolve. Sierra tilted her head as if truly considering the question. Then she smirked. "Because I can." The slap came without warning. A brutal sting that snapped Rachel's head to the side. A sound echoed through the foyer, freezing Daniel in place. Rachel's skin burned, but it was nothing compared to the fire spreading through her chest. She reached up, touching her cheek, her fingers trembling slightly. A sharp movement from within reminded her she wasn't alone. The baby kicked, hard, a protest, a warning. Sierra let out a quiet laugh, the sound slicing through the thick silence. Rachel barely registered Daniel's hands catching her shoulders, steadying her as her legs wobbled. The mansion, once her sanctuary, now felt like enemy territory. But through the haze of heartbreak, one thought took hold. Vanessa. She would not let this end here. Vanessa Donovan had built an empire from the ground up, transforming struggling companies into industry giants. Her name carried weight in Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and beyond. CEOs hesitated before speaking when she entered a room. Despite her immense success, Vanessa never flaunted her wealth. She owned luxurious properties across the globe, yet never lingered in one place for long. Her life was a whirlwind of high-stakes deals, philanthropic ventures, and cutting-edge investments. But no matter how busy she was, she never ignored a call from her family. Rachel had always been her soft spot. As the younger sister, she had spent years searching for stability. Something Vanessa feared didn't exist in the world they lived in. When Rachel had met Daniel, Vanessa had offered her cautious support, warning her to be careful. "Are you sure about him?" she had asked once, over dinner in Manhattan. Rachel had smiled, eyes full of hope. "He's different, Ness. He loves me." Vanessa had wanted to believe it. Now, as she sat in the back of her private jet, the words from Rachel's tearful phone call replayed in her mind. "I can't believe it's happening, Vanessa. She slapped me, and Daniel, he just stood there." A storm of fury tightened in Vanessa's chest. She gripped the edge of her laptop, her nails pressing into the metal. She had been in enough boardrooms to recognize manipulation, deceit, and power plays. But this wasn't business. This was personal. Her assistant, Jessica, approached cautiously. "We've arranged for a driver as soon as we land in LA. The estate is locked down from the press." Vanessa nodded, but said nothing. The jet hummed beneath her, slicing through the clouds, but all she could think about was Rachel. Alone. Pregnant. Betrayed. She clenched her fists. Sierra Monroe had made a critical mistake. Rachel was not alone, and she was about to learn exactly what it meant to cross a billionaire sister. Vanessa Donovan's fingers clenched around the pen in her hand, the plastic groaning under the pressure. She could feel the simmering rage boiling beneath her calm exterior. Daniel had cheated on her pregnant sister. And that woman, Sierra Monroe, had dared to lay a hand on Rachel. She wasn't sure which sin infuriated her more. As soon as Vanessa landed in Los Angeles, she didn't spare a second for the waiting photographers. Ignoring the flashing lights and shouted questions, she slipped into the back seat of her black SUV. "Take me to the hospital," she ordered, her voice cold. The moment she stepped into the brightly lit corridor of the private medical facility, she spotted Daniel. He was pacing outside Rachel's hospital room, his normally composed appearance shattered, shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, hands twitching at his sides. At the sight of Vanessa, he stopped in his tracks. "Vanessa, She didn't let him finish. Her hand cracked across his face with enough force to snap his head to the side. Gasps rippled down the hallway, but Vanessa didn't care. "That's for betraying my sister." Her voice was low, sharp, and lethal. Daniel blinked rapidly, bringing a shaking hand to his cheek. "I never meant—" "Shut up." Vanessa stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper but laced with undeniable fury. "If anything happens to Rachel or that baby, I will personally ensure your life is a living hell." His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. I just need to see her." "No." Vanessa's voice was final. "You'll stay away until she's strong enough to decide whether she even wants to see you again." Pushing past him, she stepped into the hospital room. The sight of Rachel lying in the hospital bed, her face pale and eyes swollen from tears, sent a crack through Vanessa's heart. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking her vitals, and one of her hands rested protectively over her belly. Rachel's lips trembled as she looked up. "I'm sorry you had to fly here," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Vanessa's expression softened as she crossed the room and took Rachel's free hand in hers, squeezing gently. "Don't be sorry," she murmured. Leaning down, she pressed a kiss to Rachel's forehead. "I'm here now, and I promise you, this isn't over." Vanessa watched as Rachel's tears slipped silently onto the hospital gown. She reached out, gently brushing them away. "Stop worrying about them," Vanessa whispered, tucking a strand of hair behind her sister's ear. "Just rest. I'll take care of everything." Rachel tried to speak, but the weight of exhaustion and heartbreak kept her silent. Her fingers curled slightly over her stomach as if shielding the life inside her. Vanessa gave her hand one last squeeze, then turned and walked out of the room. The moment the door shut behind her, her gaze locked onto Daniel. He was standing in the hallway, his face pale, eyes filled with dread. The sight of him, this man who had sworn to love and protect Rachel, sent a fresh wave of fury through her veins. "Talk," Vanessa ordered, folding her arms. "Now." Daniel exhaled shakily, his shoulders sagging. He looked like a man about to face execution. "I made a mistake," he admitted, voice raw. "Sierra was a friend of a friend. She needed investors for her boutique. It started as business, but then—" he swallowed hard, dragging a hand down his face. "I never meant to hurt Rachel." Vanessa arched a brow. "You cheated on your pregnant wife?" she said, voice sharp as glass. Daniel flinched. A passing nurse glanced their way, startled by the sudden rise in Vanessa's tone, but she didn't lower her voice. "You humiliated her," Vanessa continued. "And you let that woman put her hands on her. In her own home." Daniel's breath hitched. "I know, I was weak, Sierra. She threatened to expose everything. If I cut her off, she said she'd destroy Rachel's reputation." Vanessa let out a sharp laugh, devoid of humor. "Oh, so you let your wife suffer instead?" His silence was damning. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a chilling whisper. "If you think you can fix this with apologies, you're more foolish than I thought." "I love Rachel," Daniel insisted desperately. "I just—" "Stop," Vanessa held up a hand. "You don't get to say that right now." Daniel's jaw tightened, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "Tell me what I need to do," he said hoarsely. "You stay away from her until she's strong enough to decide if she even wants to see you again," Vanessa commanded. "If you upset her or stress her out even once, so help me, Daniel, you'll regret it." He swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." "Oh," Vanessa said coldly, turning on her heel. "You will?" The silence inside the Donovan estate was eerie, as if the very walls held their breath after the storm of betrayal that had unfolded. Vanessa walked through the grand corridors, her heels striking the polished floor with sharp precision. She found Sierra Monroe exactly where she expected, lounging in the sunlit drawing room, a delicate porcelain teacup in hand. Sierra looked up, her lips curling into an amused smirk. "Ah, Vanessa Donovan, I've heard so much about you." She set her cup down with an infuriatingly slow clink, feigning grace. "Would you care for some tea? It's a lovely blend." Vanessa didn't so much as blink. She positioned herself across from Sierra, arms crossed, her stance unwavering. "Leave," she said flatly. Sierra let out a light laugh, leaning back into the velvet armchair. That's quite the welcome, she mused, crossing her legs. You do realize Daniel wants me here, don't you? He and I, well, let's just say we've been very close. A flicker of disgust passed through Vanessa's eyes, but she didn't give Sierra the reaction she was waiting for. Instead, she took a slow step forward. You assaulted my pregnant sister, Vanessa said, her voice dangerously low. And you think there won't be consequences? Sierra tilted her head, feigning innocence. I don't recall laying a hand on anyone, she said airily. But if you want to take me to court, be my guest. I'm sure the media will love digging into Daniel's indiscretions. Vanessa's lips curved slightly, not in amusement, but in something far colder. Oh, I'm well aware of your tactics, she murmured, stepping closer. You think blackmail will save you? You clearly haven't done your research. For the first time, Sierra's confidence wavered. It was barely noticeable. A slight shift in her posture, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. Vanessa leaned in slightly, her voice a near whisper. You have exactly 5 minutes to pack your things and get out. If you don't, I'll have security drag you out, and trust me, Sierra, you won't enjoy how that plays out. Sierra's smirk twitched, her fingers tightening around the armrest. You can't intimidate me. Vanessa straightened, pulling her phone from her pocket. Ethan, she said, addressing her security chief. Escort Miss Monroe out. If she resists, remove her. Heavy footsteps sounded from the hallway as 2 security guards entered. Sierra's confidence finally cracked. This isn't over, she hissed as she stood, her voice shaking with forced defiance. Vanessa simply smiled. Oh, I'm counting on it. Vanessa barely needed to speak. She lifted a single hand and Ethan, her head of security, stepped forward. Escort her out, Vanessa said coolly. Sierra's smirk wavered as 2 security officers closed in. She shot to her feet, her heels scraping against the floor as she glared at Vanessa. You can't do this, she hissed. Daniel said. Vanessa tilted her head, her voice dangerously soft. Daniel doesn't make decisions here. This is my sister's home, and I decide who stays. Sierra's nails dug into her palms. For the first time, she realized she had lost. Completely. Fine, she spat, grabbing her purse. But as she walked past Vanessa, she paused, her voice low and venomous. This isn't over. Vanessa barely blinked. Oh, Sierra, she murmured, her lips curling in amusement. I'm counting on it. With a final furious glance, Sierra stormed toward the exit. The grand doors swung shut behind her, sealing her fate. Vanessa exhaled slowly. A moment of satisfaction flickered through her. But she knew this battle wasn't truly over. The real fight wasn't with Sierra. It was the damage left behind. Over the next few days, Rachel remained in the hospital under careful observation. Vanessa visited every day, bringing her gourmet meals, glossy magazines, and anything to lift her spirits. But none of it could erase the haunted look in Rachel's eyes. She barely spoke. She would stare out the window for hours, lost in a world of pain Vanessa couldn't reach. Daniel, on the other hand, had been forced to face a different kind of nightmare. The media had caught wind of everything: his affair, Sierra's dramatic eviction, Rachel's hospitalization. Vanessa had ensured the narrative remained crystal clear. Headlines exploded across news outlets. Billionaire sister protects pregnant wife from mistress's wrath, and heir to Donovan empire exposed in scandalous affair. Daniel had been forced into damage control, scrambling to keep his name from crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. But Vanessa had no intention of letting him escape accountability. Meanwhile, Rachel continued to recover physically, but her emotional wounds ran deeper. One evening, as Vanessa sat beside her hospital bed, Rachel finally spoke. I don't know how to move forward, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa squeezed her hand. Then don't force it. One step at a time. Rachel swallowed hard, looking down at her belly. The baby kicked gently, a small reminder of the future waiting for her. She wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time, she wasn't alone. Vanessa watched as Rachel sat in silence, her fingers grazing the faint bruise on her cheek. In the dim glow of the hospital room, her sister looked fragile, too fragile for the fire she had once carried. Rachel lifted a small mirror, studying her reflection as though searching for the woman she used to be. I keep thinking I'll wake up, she whispered. Like this is some nightmare that'll disappear with the morning light. Vanessa exhaled, reaching over to take the mirror from her hands. It's real, she admitted. But so are you, and you're stronger than this. Rachel blinked rapidly, her eyes glistening. I don't feel strong. You don't have to, Vanessa said gently. That's what I'm here for. A quiet knock on the door made them both tense. Vanessa's jaw tightened, already knowing who it was. Daniel stepped inside, holding a bouquet of white lilies, his face etched with exhaustion. He moved hesitantly, as if expecting Vanessa to strike him down where he stood. Rachel, he said, his voice thick with regret. I wanted to check on you. Vanessa stood, her eyes narrowing. Daniel shot her a pleading glance before shifting his gaze back to Rachel. Can I have a moment alone with my wife? He asked. Rachel hesitated, then looked at Vanessa. After a moment of silence, she gave a small nod. Vanessa didn't like it, but she respected Rachel's choice. Shooting Daniel one last warning glare, she stepped out, lingering just outside the door. Inside, Daniel placed the flowers on the table. They're your favorite, he murmured. I remember how you used to say they smelled like your grandmother's garden. Rachel looked at them without expression. That was before. He swallowed hard. I know, and I know I can't fix this overnight. What I did, he exhaled shakily, running a hand down his face. It was inexcusable. Rachel's gaze remained steady. Then don't excuse it. Daniel let out a humorless chuckle. You're right. He hesitated. She blackmailed me, Rachel. Threatened to go public. I should have told you, but I was weak. I let fear control me. Rachel finally met his eyes, but there was no warmth there. That's the problem, Daniel, she said quietly. You weren't just weak, you were cruel. The baby kicked, a sharp reminder that this wasn't just about them anymore. Rachel inhaled deeply, her resolve strengthening. And I don't know if I can forgive that. Rachel exhaled, her voice hollow. I don't want to talk about her. Daniel's shoulders sagged. I understand. She looked away, and I need rest. He hesitated, then bowed his head. Okay, but I meant what I said. I'll do whatever it takes. As he turned to leave, Vanessa stepped back into the room, her gaze unreadable. Daniel barely glanced at her before slipping out. Rachel remained silent, her fingers idly tracing the edge of her blanket. Vanessa watched her for a moment before stepping closer. You don't have to decide anything now, Vanessa said softly. Rachel gave a small nod, but her mind was elsewhere. The moment of quiet didn't last long. Jessica burst into the room, her face pale. Vanessa, we have a problem. Vanessa turned sharply. What is it? Jessica hesitated. Sierra just went public. Vanessa's stomach tightened. Show me. Within seconds, her laptop screen flickered to life, revealing a tabloid headline that sent a slow burn of fury through her veins. Sierra Monroe breaks silence. The truth about Daniel Donovan's marriage. The article was a masterpiece of manipulation. Sierra painted herself as the wounded lover, claiming Rachel had neglected Daniel, driven him into another woman's arms, and even suggested that Rachel's pregnancy had been a calculated trap. But the worst part was at the bottom, an insidious hint that she had private recordings of Daniel. Rachel's breath hitched as she scanned the article. She's lying. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Of course she is. She picked up her phone and dialed immediately. Michael Lawson, the family's lead attorney, answered on the first ring. I saw it, he said without preamble. We can hit her with a defamation suit, but it's tricky. She's careful with her wording. Vanessa's grip on her phone tightened. Then we make it impossible for her to release anything else. Can we file an injunction to block any alleged recordings? Michael exhaled. We can try, but it depends on the judge. If Sierra actually has something, this could get ugly. Vanessa's mind worked fast. Legal action alone wouldn't be enough. She wasn't just protecting Rachel. She was protecting the future of the Donovan family. One thing was certain. If Sierra thought she could destroy them, she had no idea who she was up against. Vanessa's grip on her phone tightened. Do it anyway, she ordered. Time is of the essence. As she ended the call, she knew this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was war. Sierra wasn't just trying to ruin Daniel. She was targeting Rachel, a pregnant wife who had already suffered enough, and Vanessa wasn't about to let her get away with it. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her legal team. It was journalists, business associates, even old friends from her philanthropic circles. Everyone wanted a statement. If she stayed silent too long, Sierra's lies would become the truth. Vanessa turned to her assistant. Jessica, schedule a press briefing. Keep it private. Only major outlets. Jessica hesitated. Are you sure? The media is tearing into this. Vanessa squared her shoulders. Then, it's time I tear back. That afternoon, in an exclusive event hall in downtown Los Angeles, Vanessa Donovan walked onto a stage, facing a room packed with journalists. The air was heavy with anticipation. Vanessa never spoke to the press unless it truly mattered. Wearing a crisp navy suit, she stood behind the podium, her face unreadable. Then, in a calm but commanding voice, she began. In recent days, Miss Sierra Monroe has made disturbing allegations against my sister, Rachel Donovan, and my brother-in-law, Daniel Donovan. Camera flashes flickered. The room held its breath. I want to be absolutely clear. These claims are baseless fabrications, designed to harm a pregnant woman during one of the most vulnerable times of her life. Her voice never wavered, but the fire in her eyes made it clear. She wasn't here to play games. My sister was the victim of a physical assault inside her own home. We have taken legal action against Miss Monroe, and her response has been to spread malicious falsehoods in an attempt to deflect from her wrongdoing. Vanessa let a moment of silence stretch, letting her words sink in. Then she leveled a cold stare at the cameras. We will not be intimidated. We will not allow these lies to stand unchallenged, and we will pursue every legal measure necessary to protect Rachel and our family's reputation. Reporters immediately shouted questions. Miss Donovan, do you deny that Daniel was having an... Vanessa held up a hand, silencing the room instantly. I will not engage in speculation. What I will say is this. Rachel deserves peace, and I will make sure she gets it. Vanessa stepped away from the podium, ignoring the barrage of questions that erupted the moment she finished speaking. Jessica was already by her side, guiding her through the throng of reporters to a waiting SUV. The moment the car door shut, Vanessa exhaled. She had done what she needed, set the record straight, defended Rachel, and made it clear that Sierra Monroe's lies wouldn't go unchallenged. But she knew this wasn't over. The press conference only ignited more speculation. Talk shows debated every angle of the love triangle scandal, turning it into primetime entertainment. And Sierra? She wasn't backing down. Within hours, her social media accounts exploded with cryptic messages. Teasers about the truth and veiled threats aimed at Vanessa. She hinted at private confessions from Daniel, even suggesting she had recordings that would expose everything. The public, hungry for more drama, devoured it. Meanwhile, Daniel was unraveling. He had moved into the guest wing of the Donovan estate, haunted by the weight of his betrayal. Every attempt to apologize to Rachel had been met with quiet indifference. She allowed him to visit her in the hospital only because her doctor advised that stress could harm the baby, but she treated him with the kind of detached politeness reserved for strangers. Vanessa, however, had no time for Daniel's guilt. She was too busy dismantling Sierra's empire, piece by piece. Through her network, she uncovered a pattern. Sierra Monroe wasn't just a scorned lover. She was a predator. For years, she had latched onto powerful men, extracting wealth and influence before carefully orchestrating their downfall. She used tabloids, paparazzi, and social media leaks as weapons, crafting narratives that painted her as the victim while ruining anyone who dared to leave her behind. It was a strategy she had perfected, but this time she had underestimated her opponent. Vanessa wasn't some heartbroken businessman. She was a billionaire sister with resources Sierra had never faced before. She hired a team of private investigators to dig deeper. Financial records, old lawsuits, former lovers too ashamed to speak out. And slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to emerge. Vanessa studied the report in front of her, her jaw tightening. The pattern was undeniable. 3 other men, wealthy, powerful, and once respected, had fallen into Sierra Monroe's trap. 2 had settled quietly, paying her off to avoid humiliation. The 3rd had been publicly destroyed when he refused. Vanessa knew exactly what to do with this information. With the right approach, Sierra's credibility could be obliterated. But there was a problem. Daniel. If Sierra truly had compromising photos, they wouldn't just ruin him. The scandal would follow Rachel and her unborn child for years. Vanessa was willing to fight a media war, but she refused to let a billionaire sister's niece or nephew grow up under a cloud of controversy. She barely had time to formulate her next move when Jessica entered the study, her face tense. "There's a Detective Mark Reynolds here to see you," she said. "Says it's urgent." Vanessa's pulse quickened. Send him in. A moment later, a tall man in a dark suit stepped inside, his expression unreadable. Miss Donovan, he greeted, offering a firm handshake. I appreciate your time. Vanessa nodded. What's this about? Reynolds exhaled. I understand your family has an ongoing legal dispute with Sierra Monroe. We've been investigating multiple missing persons cases and suspicious overdoses, and her name has come up more than once. A chill ran through Vanessa. Are you saying she's involved? We don't have definitive proof yet, Reynolds admitted, but we have strong suspicions that she's part of a network supplying illegal substances to high-profile clients. Some of those clients have overdosed under questionable circumstances. Vanessa folded her arms, keeping her expression neutral. And you think I can help? We're looking for financial transactions, phone records, anything that might tie her to these activities, Reynolds said. If your investigators uncovered anything unusual, it could be useful to our case. Vanessa hesitated. Handing over what she had could accelerate Sierra's downfall, but it could also expose the family to further scrutiny. She met Reynolds' gaze. If I give you information, I need to know exactly what you plan to do with it. The detective nodded. We're not interested in tabloid drama. We want to build a case that sticks. Vanessa took a slow breath. She had spent years crushing rivals in boardrooms. Now, she was playing a different game. And Sierra Monroe had just made her last mistake. Vanessa knew aligning with the police would push Sierra into a corner. What she didn't anticipate was how viciously Sierra would lash out. A week after handing over the evidence, Vanessa returned from the hospital to find Jessica waiting in the foyer, her face pale. There's a video, Jessica said breathlessly, thrusting an iPad into Vanessa's hands. Vanessa's stomach dropped. What kind of video? She didn't have to ask twice. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy surveillance footage. Daniel, drunk, his posture unsteady, his hands tangled with Sierra's. The timestamp confirmed it was months old. Right around the time Sierra had claimed their affair began. The footage wasn't explicit, but it was damning enough. Vanessa clenched her jaw. No one's posted it publicly yet, Jessica continued. But an anonymous email threatened to release it to every media outlet in the city, unless we drop the charges against Sierra. Vanessa inhaled sharply, steadying herself. This was Sierra's final move, pure, unfiltered blackmail. She was desperate, backed into a corner, and willing to drag everyone down with her. Vanessa placed the iPad on the table, her voice deadly calm. Forward the email to Michael Lawson, then get me Daniel, now. Minutes later, Daniel shuffled into the room, his face full of unspoken questions. Vanessa didn't say a word. She simply turned the screen toward him, his face drained of color. I had no idea she recorded this. His voice cracked. I never would have. God, Vanessa, what am I supposed to do? She watched him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You should have thought of that before you destroyed my sister's trust. Daniel stumbled back as if the words physically struck him. His hands trembled as he buried his face in them. I deserve this, but Rachel, she doesn't. At the mention of his pregnant wife, Vanessa's eyes burned with a new resolve. This isn't about you anymore, she said coldly. It's about Rachel. It's about protecting her and that child. Daniel looked up, his expression hollow. Tell me what to do. Vanessa exhaled, then turned to Jessica. Get me everything on Sierra's past lawsuits, if she wants war. She glanced at the iPad one last time before locking the screen. Then war is what she'll get. Vanessa's eyes never left Daniel's face. Get up, she ordered. We don't have time for self-pity. He rose shakily, wiping his face, but the guilt remained heavy in his eyes. I'll do whatever you say, he murmured. Vanessa exhaled, steadying herself. The police believe Sierra isn't just some bitter mistress. She's involved in drug trafficking, maybe even tied to multiple deaths. Daniel swallowed hard. This isn't just about me anymore, is it? No, Vanessa said. And if she feels cornered, she could get even more dangerous. Daniel clenched his fists. What do we do now? Vanessa's gaze hardened. We expose her first. That evening, she called Detective Reynolds to the estate. With Michael Lawson, their attorney, present, they laid out the plan. Daniel would lure Sierra into a controlled setting, pretending to offer her money in exchange for silence. The second she incriminated herself, the police would have everything they needed. Daniel hesitated. And if she records me? Vanessa's lips curled into a cold smile. Then we'll be recording her right back, with law enforcement's full support. Later that night, Daniel placed the call. He spun a desperate story, claiming Vanessa was forcing his hand, but he was willing to secretly pay Sierra off to protect Rachel and the baby. As expected, Sierra took the bait. She demanded a face-to-face meeting at a secluded rental home just outside the city. She insisted he come alone. Vanessa, Reynolds, and a small security team had no intention of letting that happen. By the time Daniel arrived at the meeting place, a remote, cabin-style Airbnb hidden among towering trees, the setup was complete. The house was wired with hidden cameras. Officers were stationed nearby, ready to intervene the moment Sierra crossed the line. Daniel sat inside, his fingers brushing over the hidden microphone taped beneath his shirt collar. His heart pounded. He thought of Rachel, of the baby, of how everything had spiraled so far out of control. Then the sound of gravel crunching outside. A sleek black car pulled up. Sierra Monroe had arrived. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. The door creaked open and Sierra strode inside, her sharp eyes flicking around the dimly lit rental home. She closed the door behind her, arms crossed. "You alone?" she asked. Daniel forced a weak grin. "Yeah. Vanessa thinks I'm with my lawyers. I had to sneak away for this." Sierra tossed her purse onto the couch unimpressed. "So? How much are we talking?" Daniel swallowed. $2 million. I can wire it tonight, but you have to destroy everything, every photo, every recording. No more interviews, no more threats. Sierra's lips curled in amusement. $2 million? Do I look that cheap to you? She leaned in, eyes gleaming. The footage I have is worth way more. Plus, let's not forget, your little billionaire sister can't prove a thing if we settle. I want $5 million, minimum. Daniel hesitated, pretending to consider. "Fine," he said shakily, "but I need to see everything first." Sierra smirked and pulled a small USB stick from her purse, twirling it between her fingers. "This has it all," she taunted. "No copies, no backups, just this." She dangled it like bait. "Transfer the money, and I disappear forever." Daniel's gaze flicked toward the fireplace where a hidden camera captured everything. "How do I know I can trust you?" Sierra laughed darkly. "You don't." She tilted her head. "But do you really have a choice?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "Let's do it." A sudden bang shattered the tension. The door flew open, and Detective Reynolds stormed in, gun drawn. "Police, don't move!" Sierra spun, eyes wild with panic. She turned back to Daniel. His phone was out. The realization hit her like a slap. "You bastard!" she shrieked, flinging the USB stick at him in blind rage. It bounced off his shoulder, landing on the floor. Officers surged forward, pinning her arms behind her back. She twisted and screamed, kicking wildly. "You can't do this! You have no proof!" Reynolds smirked. "We have you on tape, demanding $5 million to cover up evidence. That's extortion." He leaned closer. "And let's not forget, you assaulted a pregnant wife in her own home. We already have that on record." Sierra's struggles slowed as the weight of her downfall sank in. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Sierra thrashed against the officer's grip, her face twisting with rage. "You'll regret this," she spat, her glare fixed on Daniel. "I'll ruin your life." Daniel didn't flinch. He only stepped back, his expression hollow. Vanessa watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. The moment Sierra disappeared from sight, she finally exhaled. This was for Rachel. Detective Reynolds handed her a sealed evidence bag. "The USB will be analyzed, but with what we already have, Sierra Monroe is looking at serious time." Daniel sank onto the couch, running a shaking hand through his hair. Vanessa placed a hand on his shoulder, not in comfort, but in acknowledgement. "It's over." But they both knew it wasn't. Rachel had been betrayed in the worst possible way. No amount of arrests, press conferences, or legal victories could undo that. And earning back a pregnant wife's trust was a battle no courtroom could settle. The news broke within hours. Headlines exploded. Sierra Monroe arrested, stunning twist in Donovan's scandal, and blackmail, extortion, and betrayal, a high society mistress exposed. For the first time, the narrative shifted. Rachel was no longer just the woman overshadowed by scandal. She was a victim, a mother-to-be targeted by a con artist. Vanessa's name surfaced too. The media painted her as the billionaire sister who took decisive action, the woman who refused to let her family be destroyed. But while the world debated the drama, Rachel remained in the hospital, healing. When she was finally strong enough to leave, Vanessa arranged for her to stay at a secluded estate near Lake Tahoe. a sprawling retreat far from prying eyes where she could find peace. Vanessa visited daily, ensuring Rachel had the best medical care, gourmet meals, and therapy sessions with Dr. Sarah Thompson, a renowned counselor. "You have to heal emotionally as much as physically," Vanessa told her. Rachel nodded, stroking her belly. "The baby's okay, thank God." Her voice was quiet, but I feel numb. Vanessa sat beside her, gazing at the lake. "No one is rushing you," she said. "Take all the time you need." A knock interrupted them. Rachel looked up, her body stiffening. Daniel stood in the doorway holding a bouquet of lilies. Daniel stepped into the room, a single white rose in hand. His posture was hesitant, his eyes searching for something. Hope, maybe. Rachel sat by the window, hands resting over her belly. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "You look better," he said quietly. Rachel nodded. "Physically, yes." He placed the rose on the side table when she made no move to take it. "I'm glad Sierra's behind bars. I need you to know how sorry I am for everything." Rachel inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "You broke my trust in the worst way, Daniel." His shoulders sagged. "I know, and I know I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you." His voice wavered. "But if you can't forgive me, I understand." Tears pricked at the edges of Rachel's eyes, but she blinked them away. "I don't know what I want yet." She hesitated, then looked at him. "You promised to protect me, to be faithful, and you failed." Daniel swallowed hard. Rachel's voice was steady, but there was a quiet pain beneath it. "I need time to think about our marriage, our child, and whether there's a future for us at all." He nodded, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. "I'll give you whatever space you need." Vanessa stood in the corner, watching the exchange with measured silence. She saw the sincerity in Daniel's eyes, but she also knew that words meant nothing now. Trust wasn't given back, it had to be earned. Days turned into weeks. The scandal, while still present, began to fade from the headlines. New stories took over, and Sierra Monroe remained in custody. Facing multiple charges her high-priced lawyers struggled to fight. Vanessa balanced her business empire remotely, delegating deals and negotiations while keeping her focus on Rachel. Meanwhile, Rachel slowly rebuilt herself. She embraced therapy, worked through her emotions with Dr. Thompson, and perhaps most importantly, began planning for the baby. Choosing nursery colors, browsing baby clothes, envisioning the future, small steps, but they gave her purpose. Daniel never pushed. He didn't call or beg for meetings. Instead, every evening a letter arrived, handwritten, personal, regretful. He poured out his love, his sorrow, his hope, and though Rachel never wrote back, she never threw them away either. Some nights, Rachel left the letters unopened. Other nights, she read them twice. No matter how hard she tried to ignore them, Daniel's words lingered. One late afternoon, she sat on the wooden deck by the lake, the sky painted in soft oranges and pinks. A sealed envelope rested on her lap, untouched. Vanessa approached quietly, settling into the chair beside her. She didn't speak right away. She didn't need to. After a long pause, Vanessa nodded toward the letter. "Another one?" Rachel nodded. "He doesn't give up." Vanessa hesitated. "You'll have to decide eventually, whether you want to keep a life with him or walk away." Rachel's gaze stayed on the water, her thoughts distant. "He hurt me," she murmured, "but he also stood by me when it mattered. He helped put Sierra behind bars. And before all of this, we were happy. I just don't know if that happiness can ever come back." Vanessa's expression softened. "You don't owe anyone forgiveness," she said gently. "But if it's something you truly want, that's your choice. No one else's." Rachel's throat tightened. She reached over, squeezing Vanessa's hand. "I wouldn't have made it through this without you." Vanessa gave her fingers a reassuring squeeze. For a while, they sat in silence, the water lapping gently against the shore. Then in the quiet, Rachel finally found the courage to open the letter. Daniel's handwriting was familiar, steady but raw with emotion. As she read, tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time in a long time, something inside her stirred, something that wasn't just pain. A few days later, she sent for Daniel. He arrived cautiously, unsure of what to expect. When he stepped out of the car, he saw her waiting outside, one hand resting over her growing belly, the golden light of the late afternoon sun framing her in a soft glow. "I read your letters," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All of them." Daniel swallowed hard. His hands remained clasped in front of him, as if afraid to reach for her. "I meant every word," he said. "I'm so sorry for everything." Rachel studied him, her heart caught between the past and the future. She remembered their laughter, the nights spent dreaming of a life together. She remembered the way he used to hold her, promising forever. Was that life completely gone? She didn't have the answer. Not yet. Rachel inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "I don't know if I'll ever forget what happened," she admitted, "but I want this baby to have a father." She met Daniel's eyes. "I'm willing to try counseling, to see if we can find a way forward. Slowly, on my terms." Daniel's throat tightened. "I'll do whatever it takes." She didn't reach for him. She didn't need to. Instead, she turned toward the lake, walking along the paved path. He followed, their steps quiet beneath the rustling trees. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, therapy forced them to unravel wounds that had existed long before Sierra. Rachel learned to voice her fears instead of silencing them. Daniel confronted the insecurities that had driven him toward betrayal. Meanwhile, Vanessa remained a pillar of quiet support. She balanced corporate negotiations and philanthropic initiatives while keeping Rachel's well-being her top priority. She never pushed. She simply ensured Rachel had everything she needed: security, space, and the reassurance that no matter her choice, she would never be alone. By Rachel's 7th month, her health had improved, and the baby was thriving. Yet the past still lingered like a faint bruise beneath the surface. She had taken control of her life again. The Donovan estate, once a place of heartbreak, was carefully redesigned, overseen by Vanessa. The walls were repainted, rooms refurbished, painful memories replaced with warmth. Sierra Monroe remained in custody. With overwhelming evidence against her, she attempted a plea deal. Rachel and Vanessa never attended the hearings. They had already won. Instead, Rachel focused on the future. She spent mornings preparing the nursery, afternoons attending doctor's appointments, and nights reading parenting books. The fear of raising a child in uncertainty remained, but it was outweighed by hope. Then, on a crisp December morning, she went into labor. Daniel stayed beside her through every contraction, whispering quiet encouragements, wiping the sweat from her brow. Vanessa paced the hospital corridor, waiting. After hours of pain and resilience, Dr. Cynthia Wilson finally emerged with a triumphant smile. "Congratulations," she announced. "You have a healthy baby girl." Tears flooded Vanessa's eyes as she stepped into the room. And there, lying in the hospital bed, holding her newborn daughter, was Rachel. Not just a betrayed wife, but a mother stepping into a new chapter of her life. Vanessa stepped into the hospital room, her breath catching at the sight before her. Rachel lay against the pillows, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. Daniel sat beside her, his eyes red with exhaustion and overwhelming love. The baby's soft cries filled the air, a sound so fragile yet so powerful. Vanessa approached slowly, her gaze falling on the newborn's delicate face. She reached out, brushing a fingertip over the baby's downy hair. "She's perfect," Vanessa whispered. Rachel looked up, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "We're naming her Alexandra Grace Donovan." She paused. "Grace, because through everything, we found grace and forgiveness and resilience." Daniel nodded, his voice thick. "And we want you to be her godmother." Vanessa's breath hitched. "We wouldn't have made it through this without you," Rachel added softly. Emotion welled in Vanessa's chest. She leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to Alexandra's forehead. "I'd be honored." For the first time in months, everything felt still. No scandal, no betrayal, just the quiet, raw beauty of a new beginning. In the weeks that followed, Rachel and Daniel devoted themselves to their daughter, marveling at every tiny sound, every stretch of her little fingers. But healing wasn't just about late-night feedings and whispered lullabies. They continued therapy, unraveling the layers of hurt and rebuilding from the ground up. The scars of betrayal wouldn't vanish overnight, but trust could be rebuilt, not for the sake of the past, but for the future they wanted to create. Vanessa, too, found new purpose. She poured her energy into supporting women who had suffered domestic turmoil, launching initiatives to provide legal aid and safe havens for those in crisis. If Rachel had taught her anything, it was that strength wasn't just about power. It was about choice. The Donovan estate, once tainted by heartbreak, transformed. Vanessa oversaw renovations, ensuring that every painful memory was replaced with warmth and light. Sierra Monroe remained in custody, attempting a plea deal, but Vanessa and Rachel never attended the hearings. They had already moved forward. One crisp morning, as Vanessa watched Rachel rocking Alexandra by the window, she knew the storm had passed. The billionaire sister had fought to protect her family. The betrayed wife had refused to be defined by heartbreak, and together, they had reclaimed their lives. If this story has moved you, if you believe in the power of resilience and redemption, share this journey. Like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful tales of strength, survival, and second chances.